10 craziest fights in NFL history. When it comes down to it, we realize getting paid to go around and tackle each other is pretty much the concept of football. However, sometimes the player's adrenaline can get pumped up a little too hard, causing the game to get a little bit more intense. In this case, who doesn't like to see a little physical confrontation in sports? I'd say it makes things much more interesting, as it gets everyone rattled up. In this video, we have documented the 10 craziest fights in NFL history. Get your ice cold drink ready, because it's about... Number 10. Andre Johnson versus Cortland Finnegan. During a November 2010 regular season game between the Houston Texans and Tennessee Titans, Houston star receiver Andre Johnson was matched up with Titans corner Cortland Finnegan, who was known for his trash talking and for being one of the most annoying D-backs in the league. Johnson was 6'3", 227 pounds, and Finnegan was only 5'10", and 188. But the outspoken corner didn't back down in his opportunity to strap up one of the league's best skill position players. After tensions had mounted throughout the game, the two engaged in a blocking situation, where many NFL fights commence. Their battle led to Johnson ripping off Finnegan's helmet, and Finnegan ripping off Johnson's. Then the wide receiver landed 3 haymakers before the refs could break things up. Finnegan seemed to get beaten up, but he was smiling throughout. He also didn't miss the opportunity to get in one final jab when he retired in 2015. He said Johnson hits like a bish. Can we please lure these retired players into a celebrity boxing match? Number 9. Sam Shields versus Devin Hester. Next up in our courtroom, we are taking it back to 2011, when the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers faced each other. Hester and Shields had a moment on the field where the two were seen pushing and shoving. Hester grabs Shields' face mask and then proceeds to throw a punch. Officials seemed to let it go on, interestingly enough, but a flag was then thrown to break up the scuffle. Both Shields and Hester were called for unnecessary roughness. The game continued to resume as normal, and Green Bay won the game. Number 8. AJ Green versus Jalen Ramsey. We'd call Ramsey the modern-day Cortland Finnegan, but he's way better. Both corners, however, have been noted for their legendary trash-talking of opposing wide receivers. Ramsey loves trying to irk his opponents through his words, and apparently, he was successful when he faced the All-Pro Bengals receiver who lit up many in his days. Late in the first half of the game, Jacksonville went on to win 23-7. Ramsey pushed Green. Then Green grabbed Ramsey by the neck, threw him on the grounds, and then punched him in the helmet. It was a shocking move from the normally mild-mannered Green, one of the more respected players in the league. Both players were ejected. I lock receivers down physically and then mentally. I get in their mind and get under their skin. I talk my talk, Ramsey said. He later added that he was calling Green weak and soft during the game. Ramsey did say, however, that he didn't say anything overly personal or about Green's family. Apparently, soft and weak was all it took. Number 7. Greg Jennings versus Brandon Browner. When the Packers and the Seahawks met in 2012, a fight broke out after what looked like an illegal hit to Jennings by Browner. Jennings got up from the blow and rushed Browner, who then pulled Jennings down. The two rolled around on the ground for a few seconds while Browner pinned Jennings down. 2 refs, as well as Jordy Nelson, came to defuse the situation and pull them apart. Both were giving penalties for unsportsmanlike conduct, and Browner was fined $7,875 for the hit to Jennings. Since the two weren't ejected and only Browner got further discipline, this fight goes down as number 7 on our countdown. Number 6. Odell Beckham Jr. versus Josh Norman. The two had been in each other's throat for what seemed like most of the game. It was a bad game for OBJ, who had dropped the ball and the Giants were down 35-7. We saw a minor scuffle between the two early on, but as the game went on, a frustrated Beckham decided to take some anger on Norman. OBJ rushed him head to head, and Norman retaliated, taking a knee to Beckham's head. No further damage was done as the ref was in sight to quickly grab Norman. Beckham was penalized for 3 different unnecessary roughness penalties. However, that was the only punishment he suffered. Beckham was not ejected, nor was he fined for his head-to-head to Norman. When asked about his actions, OBJ simply said he was playing the game and spoke about the unfortunate loss. Norman, on the other hand, felt like the NFL should have punished OBJ accordingly, and also commented on his maturity level. Beckham seemed to be on Norman the whole game, making it seem like more of a personal problem rather than just playing the game. Number 5. Myles Garrett versus Mason Rudolph. Thursday's Night Madness is already one of the more memorable fights in recent sports history. Cleveland was up 21-7 with just seconds left, and the game was all but over when this went down. Rudolph threw a dump-off, and after he did, Garrett tackled him. The two started wrestling on the ground, with Rudolph seemingly trying to remove Garrett's helmet. Pittsburgh O-line attempted to separate the defensive end and the QB, but they couldn't split things up before Garrett landed his nasty helmet blow. The superstar defensive end, known for being mild-mannered off the field, later called the fight foolish and out of character. On Friday, the NFL announced Garrett would be suspended for at least the rest of the season and postseason. Number 4. Albert Haynesworth versus Andre Gurode. Prior to the Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph fight in 2019, the brawl between Albert Haynesworth and Andre Gurode was considered the worst one of all of the battles in NFL history. During a 2006 game between the Tennessee Titans and Dallas Cowboys, Gurode was on the ground after his helmet got knocked off. Haynesworth saw him and stomped on his head before walking away. Haynesworth's actions resulted in him getting a 5-game suspension. Meanwhile, Gurode needed 30 stitches just above and below his right eye. Number 3. Richard Sherman versus Trent Williams. This confrontation came about after the wild card game when Washington Redskins Williams got up in Seattle Seahawks Sherman's face. The two briefly exchanged a few words, and then Williams threw a straight jab to Sherman's face. As Sherman threw his hands up as a sign that he wasn't going to retaliate, he proceeded to say that he didn't do anything and that Williams had hit him first. As Sherman gets pulled away, he says, "Come see about that." Williams later apologized for his actions, saying it was immature, and he was entirely at fault. Sherman even shared on his Twitter account that Williams apologized to him via text. Even though there was not much of a fight, we were given this moment the 3rd spot in this countdown. It takes some real guts to just go up to Sherman and punch him right in the face. I mean, I guess you would be pretty upset too if you just lost the wild card game. Number 2. Santana Moss versus Corey Webster. Number 2 on our countdown goes to an occurrence that happened in 2009 when the Redskins and the Giants met. Things took a turn after Moss blocks Webster. The two start fighting and punches were thrown while Webster knocked off Moss's helmet. Moss connects a punch to Webster, as Webster follows by bringing Moss down. The two received personal foul penalties for the play, but neither of them was ejected. Later, the NFL issued a $5,000 fine for their actions. Number 1. Michael Crabtree versus Aqib Talib. It has been said that there is some beef between these two. We saw a glimpse of it during the 2016 season when the Raiders and the Broncos faced each other in the Week 17, when Talib ripped off a gold chain from Crabtree's neck. After some subtle shoving, the two went about the game not causing a scene, since there might be some unfinished business between the two. Another fight broke out in Week 12 of the 2017 season, after a long block by Crabtree, which pushed Talib out of the sidelines. During the altercation, Talib ripped off Crabtree's chain again, as well, and his helmet. Talib ripped off Crabtree's chain again, as well as his helmet being pulled off. The two were pulled apart but meet again to try to throw in a few more punches. Both Talib and Crabtree were ejected from the game and suspended for 2 games, which was later reduced to 1 game. The history between these two, and the fact that Talib was able to grab Crabtree's chain off his neck not once, but twice makes this fight a little more interesting, which is why this brawl finishes the countdown for the number 1 spot. In your opinion, which of these fights do you consider the most vicious? Please, let us know in the comments down below.